Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing the Paul Morphy saga, and I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, if this is the Staunton challenge video, why is there this Samuel Standish Bowden person here instead of Staunton? We will get to that. It might take us a while, but we're definitely gonna get there. And I would just like to mention, in the previous video, a lot of you realized this. I myself haven't. When I presented, not this, but when I presented all of Morphy's games that he played during his stay in New York in 1857. I said that he won some games against his rival Paulson with games at odds, but I misinterpreted the table. So as you can see, those games Morphy won with odds. For example, with Queen's Knight odds were against Perrin, not against Paulson. So even games are on the left, games at odds are on the right. So I missed that for some reason. I did think it was weird when I mentioned it, but I thought maybe there were some games behind closed doors where we didn't have the moves and maybe they had a lot of wine. I don't know. But yeah, definitely, he did not play any games at odds against Paulson. So just wanted to mention that. And also, I mentioned in the previous video that the game we've shown was actually game 5 of the match between Morphy and Stanley, when in fact it was game 1. So it wasn't, like I said, first games won by Morphy, then game 5 drawn. It was actually first game drawn and then 4 games won by Morphy. So no idea how I mixed that up, but just putting it out there. And thanks to everyone for reminding me. Now, getting back to our Staunton challenge. So Morphy spent some 3.5 months in New York during 1857, and he played all those games. And then he returned, of course, to New Orleans, where he received a nice welcome. They had a party. Everyone was very excited to see Morphy, and chess became even more popular in New Orleans. They had a lot more new members. Everyone, was happy to be in the same place as Morphy was, and Morphy started playing a lot more chess. He started throwing a lot more simultaneous exhibitions. He played games at odds, and the challenge he threw at the New York Chess Club, that he will play anyone at the odds of a pawn and the move, he now shifted to the entire United States, not just to New York, and he said that he will play anyone on those terms with $100 per stake. And no one accepted this offer. And then the members of the New Orleans Chess Club issued a challenge to none other than Howard Staunton. So here they challenged Staunton to a match. They said that Morphy would very gladly visit England, but due to some family issues, he's unable to travel at the moment, and that they would enjoy if Staunton came to New Orleans for the match to be played there. And there were 10 points of the match, 10 terms, but only 3 of them are basically the important ones for us. It's that the match would be played at $5,000 a stake, so Staunton would have to present $5,000 if he wanted to face Morphy, and even if Staunton lost, he would still be reimbursed $1,000 to cover traveling expenses and the acceptance of the match. Also, it would be probably after Morphy's match against Louis Paulson, it would not be allowed to think more than half an hour for one move. And another term I found interesting was that Morphy and Staunton were to be given exclusive rights for the publishing of the games, no one else. So it would be their right and privilege to do with their games and their moves as they please. But Staunton replied a few months after that via telegraph that he's unable to accept the match on those terms, that Staunton is extremely busy now, and he hasn't been playing professional chess for quite some time now, and it would take him some time, let's say a month, to brush up on his skills, but he's currently so busy that he cannot simply leave work and travel to New Orleans to accept such a match. But okay, some time passed, and Morphy decided that he will go to England. He was invited to the Birmingham chess meeting, and he accepted their invitation. First, Morphy's family said that he shouldn't go, that he will soon be accepted in the bar. He will soon be able to start practicing being a lawyer, as that's what he's supposed to do. But he said that he would very much enjoy going to Europe and challenging some masters there, and also to attend the famous Birmingham chess meeting. So Morphy departed for Birmingham, but in that exact moment, I think it was a day after Morphy actually left, that Staunton challenged Morphy to a match via telegraph. He said that since there's he cannot, if Morphy cannot come to England and Staunton cannot come to New Orleans, that they should organize a match via telegraph. And such matches were already organized, not on such a long distance. It was more of a city next to city telegraph match, but never on such a big distance. But since Morphy already left for England, he could not accept that. And Morphy later said that if he knew that Staunton was going to challenge him to a telegraph match, that he would definitely stay and postpone his trip to England. But okay, Morphy arrives, I think he first arrived in Liverpool, then he went to Birmingham, and when he arrived to Birmingham, everyone who heard of Morphy, they expected like this really, big muscular dude with facial hair, a very, very strong expression, but Morphy was nothing of the sort. And then when Morphy came to Birmingham, they took him to a photographer, and they made a very nice portrait of him, and they hanged it in the Birmingham Chess Club. So if you are maybe from Birmingham and you have access to Birmingham Chess Club, maybe you can check if Morphy's portrait is still there and share with us in the comments. That would be pretty great. The problem was the Birmingham chess meeting that Morphy so hastily rushed into was supposed to start some 2 days after Morphy's arrival to Birmingham, but then they switched it. It was supposed to be in June, and they switched it to August. So Morphy really arrived prematurely to the event. And then he had a lot of free time on his hands, so he did have he wasn't really a good sailor. He was very sick when he arrived, so it took him some time to recover. But he then decided to go to London. He went to London, and he met Staunton there, Howard Staunton, the strongest player in England. And amongst the strongest players in Europe, and Morphy was a guest at Staunton's house, where Morphy again issued a challenge to Howard Staunton. He said, "Okay, I've arrived in England. I challenge you to a match now." And Staunton accepted. He said, "Okay, not a problem. Just give me 1 month to brush up on my endgame and opening skills, and we will then commence our match with terms to be decided afterwards." And while there, Morphy said that maybe since they're already here, Staunton shared Morphy with Morphy his food, his house, his hospitality, and Morphy said that maybe they could play like a friendly game, just the two of them. And Staunton declined for the moment. He was not interested in a friendly game, but he did invite two of his friends. One of them being not friends, but they were also renowned chess masters in England, Samuel Standish Bowden and Mr. Barnes. You all know Mr. Barnes, the person who had the best result against Morphy when Morphy visited England, and we've covered some games between Morphy and Barnes, I think some 2 years, maybe 3 years ago on this channel, but we are going to revisit them as it is important for the Morphy saga. So here, while in there, they enjoyed some consultation games. They played 2 against 2, and Morphy won all of those games. So basically, Morphy beat Staunton, but not in a one-on-one match. And also, some people say that during this stay there, as only 2 consultation games are accounted for, that it would make sense if Morphy and Staunton played some games and then maybe just never published them and maybe never spoke about them. But it's 2020, so if such a thing happened, probably it would have come out about now. But who knows? Maybe they played some games while Morphy stayed at Staunton's house, or maybe they haven't. But Morphy's first serious match, his first match when he arrived to England was against Edward Lowe, the owner of the Lowe's Hotel, where Morphy was staying, and he defeated him 6-0. And he is the first person in England who really knew what to expect from Morphy. He was also a good chess player himself, because none of the players, they knew Morphy was strong, but they didn't actually knew that Morphy was Morphy strong, so to say. So this is one of the games we're going to cover. His first serious opponent upon his arrival to England is Samuel Standish Bowden. So while we are waiting to see what happens with Staunton and the challenge, we are going to cover some of the games that Morphy played here. So Samuel Standish Bowden, if you are a chess player, and I imagine you are since you are watching this, you might have heard of Bowden's mate. It's the checkmate given with two bishops when one bishop is slicing one way and the other bishop delivers checkmate, and the king's path to escape is blocked by his own pieces. So that's Bowden's mate, and it is well attributed to Samuel Standish Bowden, who played it, I think, a few years before his match with Morphy here. But this is one of the games we're going to cover. It's the first game of their match. I'm going to check up on some of the other ones. If they're interesting, we're going to show a bit more games between the two of them. Then we're going to continue our saga from there. But that's enough intro for one video. Morphy with the white pieces against Samuel Bowden opens with e4. Bowden replies with e5, and Morphy goes straight for the head. He goes for the king's gambit, and Bowden declines the gambit. He goes for bishop to c5, which was a known way to decline the king's gambit in those days. We have knight to f3. Morphy continues development, and now d6, making room for the light square bishop. We have c3, preparing a breakthrough in the center with d4, and now bishop to g4. And as you can see, Bowden really did like his bishops, as he brings them into the game before knights. And you know, there's a saying in chess, you should always bring your knights into the game before your bishops. But okay, bishop to e2 by Morphy. We have knight to c6, and now b4, grabbing more space on the queen side, bishop to b6, and now b5, dislodging Bowden's knight from c6. We have knight to a5, and now comes d4 finally. So grabbing a lot of central squares here. We have bishop captures on f3, bishop captures on f3, and now e captures on d4. We have c captures and the queen to f6 now, preventing any d5 ideas since the rook will be hanging on a1, and it's just a very nice developing move for Bowden. So black looking good here. Morphy definitely against a decent opponent. We have bishop to e3 as the d4 pawn was attacked twice, and now knight to c4. Now the knight finds his way back into the game with an attack on the bishop on e3 that's undefended. So bishop to f2. He has to abandon the defense of the f4 pawn, and here Bowden captures it. Maybe a slightly more precise way would be bishop to a5 check, forcing the king to f1. But this wasn't a problem in those days. If you play the king's gambit, you would also play king f1, and then maybe castle artificially g3, king g2, and bring the rook into the game this way. So not really worried about this, and Bowden doesn't seem to think that it should be played. So he goes for queen captures on f4. He grabs a pawn, and okay, Morphy now castles to safety, and if nothing, he at least has the semi-open file for his rook now. And there is actually one game that was played after this game and reached this exact same position where knight to e7 was played. It's an improvement on the game where knight to f6 was played. It was played in 1904, but black was still able managed to lose this game. But okay, knight to f6. And queen to d3 now by Morphy, adding a second defender here and pressuring the knight here. And here knight goes back. We have knight to a5. Reluctant to go d5 to defend the knight this way because this would maybe give Morphy attacking chances as Bowden's king is still in the center of the board. So knight to a5 and now comes knight to c3. Morphy continues developing. We have castles and now g3. Pushing the queen back, queen to h6, and now king g2, improving the position of the king. Also, the king will now help out with the defenses, and planning knight to e2, followed by knight to f4 to bring the knight into the game. We have rook a to e8, and now Morphy also goes rook a to e1, and king to h8. Quite a weird move, as there is nothing on this diagonal to make the king go to h8. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe some knight g8 to e7 action is being played to shift the knight over to g6, but for the moment it's hard to say. Morphy goes bishop to e3. He kicks away the queen back to g6, and now knight to e2, preparing knight to f4 to further harass the queen. So h6, Bowden makes an escape route for his queen, and now first bishop to d2. Now the rook will also keep an eye on the pawn here, so if the pawn is at any moment captured, then knight f4 just opens up a triple attack on the knight, and also the queen is under attack, so black just falls apart here. So after bishop d2, we have d5 now, d5 by black, now challenging Morphy's center. And here, point is, if you capture, then Morphy will have doubled his pawns here, but black will be able to trade queens. And Morphy doesn't mind a queen trade, but he prefers a queen trade on his own terms. So first, knight f4, he improves the position of his pieces. We have queen back to h7, and now comes e5. So here, Morphy manages to save the d4 pawn. For the moment, you cannot capture it because the knight would be hanging here, but also now there's the attack on the knight on f6. So here, Boden trades, we have queen captures, knight captures, and now, instead of moving the knight, first knight to c4, going after Morphy's bishop on d2. And here, feel free to pause the video and try to find what Morphy had in mind here, and what is the best move for white. Well, I'll give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that you should create a double attack. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop to b4. Now the rook is under attack and the knight here. And here, Morphy just wins the exchange. So if you don't want to lose a piece, knight to e4, and now Morphy goes for the rook. Bishop captures on f8, we have rook captures on f8, and now knight to f4, bringing the knight into the game, saying that if you capture my pawn here, then I'm just going to go for bishop captures, pawn captures, and now the deadly knight to e6, with again a double attack, and you cannot defend it. The d8 square is covered by the knight, so you cannot save the bishop. If you capture, of course, then rook captures rook, and it's just game over for black. So instead, after knight f4, Boden tried knight e to d2. He went for the rook on f1, also pressuring the bishop on f3. But now Morphy just trades down into an endgame that he feels very confident playing. He gives back the exchange, bishop captures on d5. We have knight captures on f1. Now bishop captures on c4, again attacking the knight. The knight has to go back, only move, knight to d2. And now bishop back to d5, getting away from the knight and also putting pressure on the b7 pawn. And here, Boden's last hope is g5. You have to kick away the knight from here, but his spidey sense didn't go off. Instead, he played bishop captures on d4, expecting bishop captures on b7 from Morphy. But once again, while I have a nice sip of my water, feel free to pause the video and to win this game for white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on pushing the pawn. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, of course, it is e6. Point is, black is unable to react to this because if you capture knight g6 check, just wins the game on the spot. And of course, if you go rook e8, then just captures on f7. And once the rook moves, it's just a very nice mate. You don't even have to bring a queen into the game. You could also go for a nice double knights mate. Check, king has to go here, and then you bring another knight into the game with checkmate, as the knight and bishop cover these squares, and the two knights guard each other. Very, very poetic mate. So after e6, we have g5. This is Boden's last attempt, as he should have done before grabbing the pawn on d4, but now just e7 by Morphy. We have rook to e8, and now bishop captures on f7, going after the rook there. G captures on f4, Morphy calmly recaptures, as the next move he will capture the rook, or the rook moves, he brings the queen into the game. And now Boden can either try something like this to give up the rook and go into this endgame, where Morphy would have a rook and bishop against the bishop and knight, and Boden of course knows that Morphy is more than capable of winning this. So here, Boden, instead of resigning, he played rook captures on e7, and after Morphy recaptured, he resigned here. Not really sure why he did this first, but probably he had a good reason for this. I don't know what the reason is, but he probably did have it. So this is the first game between Paul Charles Morphy and Samuel Standish Boden. They played 10 games, 11 if you count also the simultaneous game. Morphy played against 5 chess masters in a simultaneous exhibition, and Boden was again one of the participants, and he defeated him there. But out of the 10 games they played in this match, Morphy won 6. 3 of the games were drawn, and 1 game was won by Boden. and I still have to decide whether we're gonna show more of them or not. I'm gonna check them out, and then we're gonna see what it's going to do. And as Bowden was the I just prepared one letter that I would just like to read. As Bowden was one of the first to experience Morphy's real strength, here is a letter he wrote. He says, let us do Mr. Morphy full justice. He is beyond question one of the finest players living, and we may fairly question whether he will meet with his superior. He possesses singular coolness along with a great concentrative power, is deliberate but not by any means slow, and to great depth of insight he unites a rapidity and faculty in combination which we have not seen surpassed. His memory is remarkably tenacious, and the unerring truth and force with which he pursues an advantage once obtained have excited the admiration of the best players in London. His style of play is attacking and brilliant, occasionally rather over hazardous, but he possesses a steadiness which, when we consider his youth, is marvelous. We heartily congratulate our chess brethren in America upon the skill and chivalry of their young champion. He possesses a truly gigantic capacity for chess, which was never fully called forth, because even its partial development sufficed to enable him to triumph over all opponents. So as you can see, even he understood that Morphy is nowhere near his full strength, that Morphy is only as good as he needs to be to defeat his opponents. But we're definitely going to cover more of the games from his visit, and we still have to check up on what happened with the challenge to Staunton as we do go on with this. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. It took us a bit longer as we had to cover what happened after the first American Chess Congress. His return to New Orleans, and then everything coming up to the match with Staunton. But as it is a lot to take in, the video took up a bit longer. But that's why we have the Sagas to enjoy more chess. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Douglas Brins, Johnny Olsen, Shai Gross, Joe Hagenroth, and Matthew Finn for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.